the U.S. men's national team has just dropped the roster for the 2024 Nations League semifinals and finals window coming up here in late March. Hello and welcome back to the T26 channel, where we look at everything related to the U.S. men's national team. Today we're going to be taking a look at the U.S. men's national team roster that was selected for the 2025 Nations League semifinals and hopefully finals that are coming up. The semifinal match against Panama is set to be played on March the 20th at 7 p.m. Hopefully we win that match and move on to play either Canada or Mexico in the finals in the days following. When we take a look at this roster, there's a lot to be excited about and a lot of names that I think we all expected to get called in. But when we make it to the forwards group, there's a few puzzling decisions that I'm not sure why we made. We're going to take a deep dive into each player group and have a brief conversation about who got called in and what we're expecting to see from a few key players. Starting off with our goalkeepers, we have Matt Turner of Crystal Palace, Patrick Schulte of the Columbus Crew, and Zach Steffen of the Colorado Rapids. These three goalkeepers being called in is really not a shock to anyone, as our goalkeeping situation is a little bit up in the air. I think Matt Turner comes in as our de facto starter, regardless of what Patrick Schulte or Zach Steffen has done to begin their seasons in MLS. Even though Matt Turner hasn't played a lot this year with Palace, he has performed really well recently when he has been called into action in cup games. When it comes to Schulte and Steffen being called in, I can't really complain about it too much, as nobody else has really stepped up and claimed that backup position or even really pushed Matt Turner for the starting job. Both have played well enough in the past to earn an additional look under Mauricio Pochettino, but I don't think that either are really the answer going forward, and I believe that we would be better served calling in a younger goalkeeper like Diego Cochin to continue to expose him to our full national team. While I wouldn't expect him to play at all, I would have liked to see him get called in and continue to just absorb the level and grow with the U.S. men's national team. That being said, I'm really not going to complain too much about the third goalkeeper on the list. Next, I'm going to talk about our defenders and break them up into two groups, our center backs and our fullbacks. We've elected to bring 5 center backs to this camp, and those 5 center backs are Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty of Celtic, Mark McKenzie of Toulouse, Chris Richards of Crystal Palace, and Tim Ream of Charlotte FC. And when looking at these center backs, I don't have any complaints at all here. I think that Tim Ream, he is aging out, but nobody has fully taken that role from him yet. So he may be here just for a little bit of that defensive leadership. But I think that we have a lot to learn from seeing Chris Richards play next to Mark McKenzie. And we also have an opportunity to see Austin Trusty and Cameron Carter-Vickers paired at the national team level. They've had some up and downs here at Celtic this season, and at their peak, they can bring quite a bit to the table. So hopefully they can impress in camp and either earn themselves the starting pairing or show that those two belong and they can earn the backup position of what I think is our highest pairing in Richards and McKenzie. Because we brought 5 center backs to this camp, we've only brought 3 fullbacks. And to nobody's surprise, we have Joe Scally of Borussia Mönchengladbach and Anthony Robinson of Fulham, but we also have Marlon Fossey of Standard Liège. And he's here to audition again for that backup right back position. I'm expecting this camp to be a full-out competition between Joe Scally, who is the front runner, and Marlon Fossey, who is fighting for that second spot. With Serginho Dest just now making his comeback after his ACL injury, he's not included in this camp, and I think that Scally and Fossey are really fighting it out to see who should continue to be called in once Dest makes his return. For me, Joe Scally is the frontrunner here. It's his position to lose, but I think that Marlon Fossey has a case to be made. Up next is our midfielder group, and this is by far our deepest section of the player pool. And we've called in Tyler Adams of Bournemouth, Johnny Cardoso of Real Betis, Tanner Tessman of Lyon, Weston McKennie of Juventus, Diego Luna of Real Salt Lake, and Giovanni Reina from Borussia Dortmund. And while I don't think that there's any major surprises here, if we want to call on one, it's going to be Diego Luna. He impressed in the January camp with his toughness, his slightly different style of play, and his ability to pick a pass. I think he really impressed Mauricio Pochettino back in January and earned his spot here. Hopefully we can see the best out of Diego Luna and he can stake his claim as a member of the senior team. He's worked really hard for it, and I know a lot of us have been excited to see him moving forward. Who starts in the midfield at that creative number 10 position, I'm not 100% sure. Gio Reyna's gotten some minutes recently at Borussia Dortmund with Julian Brandt being injured, but he hasn't looked great. Diego Luna making that jump to the full senior team instead of the BC roster of the January camp, that might be a little bit much to start off in a competitive tournament like this. We may also see Weston McKennie at that number 10. He's proven that he can do it. He can really bring a lot of value to the attack, so I'm not sure how we're going to line up, but I would expect to see probably Weston McKennie take that spot just off of the bat. On that note, and with the depth of our central midfield, we have a lot of flexibility there too. We have three really strong defensive midfielders in Tyler, Johnny, and Tanner, and Tyler, I think, is best at the 6. He is really defensive minded and doesn't offer a lot going forward, but he can contribute there, and he's so strong at anchoring our back line and sitting in front of them. Johnny, on the other hand, is a little bit more offensive minded. He does a great job on the defensive side of the ball too. He cuts off passing lanes. He really gets involved and disrupts the offensive style of play, so he may fit in there and we may see him get a couple more minutes. Tanner Tessman, I know he really impressed Mauricio Pochettino back in November and got a personal compliment and shout out in a post-game interview. So we may see all three of them feature in these next 2 games. I'm not quite sure, but nonetheless, our depth there is very strong and all 3 deserved the call. Now we move on to our group of forwards, and this is where things get a little bit weird. We have our consistent players who are always called in, and then we have some odd calls as well. So in this group, we have Patrick Agyemang of Charlotte FC, Yunus Musa of AC Milan, Christian Pulisic of AC Milan, Josh Sargent of Norwich, Tim Weah of Juventus, and Brian White of the Vancouver Whitecaps. And again, we all expected to see Christian, we all expected to see Weah, we all expected to see Sargent, who's probably going to anchor us at the number 9 position, but I don't think any of us expected Agyemang and Brian White. Most of us thought Agyemang had a real shot at getting called in. I think Brian White was an absolute outside call. And personally, I would have rather seen a little bit more depth get called into our midfield with the number 10 position or the number 8 position, where Paxton Aronson can really fit in, and I think he's earned his call up as well. Outside of that, I think his brother Brendan, really, I would rather have him on this roster over Brian White or Patrick Agyemang. I think that we have enough depth with our other players like Tim Weah to fill in as a number 9 behind Josh Sargent that Brendan Aronson can bring a little bit more to the table than those other 2. However, both of those players played well and produced in January camp in front of Mauricio Pochettino, so I can't fault him too much for bringing them in. Their overall body of work may not stand out to me, but he's seen them in training, he knows what he wants to bring to the table, and he knows who he wants to give a look to. With this still being a little bit early in his tenure, I'm going to give him a pass here, especially because we're missing 2 key players in Folarin Balogun and Ricardo Pepi. Something else that's puzzling me here a little bit in our forward group is the inclusion of Yunus Musa. I know he's been used as a winger in the past, however, I don't see him as a true forward. He's proven that his decision-making in the final third is still not quite there, but his contributions on the ball in that midfield position, breaking lines with his dribbling, and his defensive capabilities at AC Milan are absolutely top tier. So I don't really see why he's continuing to be used as a forward and a winger here, where his depth and his qualities really fit that of a midfielder. We'll see how he gets utilized. There's a lot that we can do with these players in this formation, and I'm excited to see what we bring to the table. I fully expect us to advance past Panama and whoever we meet in the finals to win another Nations League title. All right, guys, that's everything I've got for you today. I think, again, we've got a really strong roster. We have a couple of puzzling moves, but there's a lot to be excited about. Let me know your thoughts on the roster. Leave a like and a comment in the comment section down below. Who do you think should have gotten called in? Who's the biggest snub that we have so far? And how do you think we're going to line up? What's our starting 11 look like? Leave it down below, and I'll look forward to talking to you guys soon.